Welcome to Hooked on Health. My name is Sam Jenny, and today we're talking all about home environment. Today I talked to R.D. Chin, a feng shui practitioner, author, teacher, and licensed New York State architect who opened up about the importance of a healthy, well-balanced environment and the effect it can have on our health.
My name is R.D. Chin, and I am a feng shui architect. And I live in Midtown Manhattan, New York City. And I've been doing feng shui since 1991. So it's almost over 30 years. I can't believe it. So, and my background is that I am an architect. I went to engineering school at Tufts University, and I went to University of Pennsylvania for my graduate school in architecture. And I came to New York City because I was very fortunate to work with this famous architect, Paul Rudolph. Now he's passed away. And I have a little side story to that because when I came to New York looking for jobs as an architect, I bumped into one of my teachers, and she was right by Carnegie Hall. And she says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm looking for a job." And so she says, "Well, why don't you go?" I forgot what the name of the department, but anyway, it's for employment, for the Department of Employment. So I went there, and there was this woman who looked at my portfolio, and she kind of flipped through these 3x5 cards. This was back in 1981, and she said, "Oh, I have a opening at Paul Rudolph." And my mind was going crazy because Paul Rudolph is a noted famous architect. And I thought he died. And then I said, "Oh my gosh." So I ended up getting an interview there, and I got the job within the week. Now, at that time, I was actually living in Philadelphia. So I commuted from Philadelphia to New York City for a full month to make sure that I had the job with Rudolph. And within that month, and that's when I found my apartment here in Midtown Manhattan, which I'm still living here. It's been 40 years. I'm living in the same apartment building.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. So talk about feng shui. Feng means wind, shui is water, wind and water. And the principle about feng shui is about creating harmony and balance of our lives and our spaces. And so here I live in 30th Street and 8th Avenue, and talk about good feng shui. My office is literally across the street. So of course, during this pandemic, this is the perfect time to have an office literally across the street. So I feel very blessed. So how I got into feng shui was actually back in 1990. It came from a very emotional beginning. And my father passed away suddenly. And then a friend of mine, Mitch, was dying of AIDS, and he died in April. My dad died in February, then Mitch died in April. And so it was highly recommended for me to do some kind of a healing work to address the grief. And there was a neighbor of mine, Stacy, actually, who lived on the floor below me, and she was studying with a woman named Barbara Brennan, who wrote a book called Hands of Light. And this is a modality of just trying to, just deal with all levels of emotions. And so I worked with Stacy, and I had a revelation that there was something more for me to do than just being the architect and interior designer. And so at that particular point in time, I happened to be doing freelance for an interior designer. Her name is Nina Hughes. And Nina came up to me and she says, "I have this book which may interest you. It's called Interior Design with Feng Shui by Sarah Rosbach." And she said, "And let me show you what I did in my office." So she made sure she placed all the desks in her office to be in a commanding position. She had the books in the knowledge corner. She had the receptionist in the helpful people area. And so I read the book, and I immediately got entranced by it on a lot of different levels. One level because it reconnected me back to my Chinese cultural heritage. I'm third generation Chinese American. I was born here. My parents were born here. But somehow this tradition just kind of evoked, oh, this is something of my heritage I should know more about. So talk about synchronicities. I always believe in synchronicities or coincidences. And another neighbor of mine in my building, Peggy, called me up and says, Ron, I'm moving to the Upper East Side. I would love for you to do my interior design in my new apartment. I said, sure. And I said, I picked up this book on feng shui. Would you be open to my using these ideas? And Peggy said, sure. And of course, these are the clients you want to have. Sure, you can do anything you wish. So I applied some of the principles to Peggy's apartment, and she loved it. And she said, Ron, you really need to integrate this feng shui, this concept, as part of your architecture and into design work. And I'd like to make a suggestion. You need to change your name. I said, change my name? She said, you need to change your name to R.D. Chin. And I said, why R.D. Chin? It stands for Ronald Douglas. That's my official name. And she says, oh, it's so inscrutably Chinese. You just use your initials. And interestingly enough, if you look from a different perspectives, it's a power name. Numerologically, it's a very auspicious name. So I changed my name immediately to R.D. Chin. And so Peggy is my very, very first client. And then from then on, at the end of the interior design book by Sarah Rosbeck, there was a resource to Professor Lin Yun. So he was like the master of feng shui. And I said, well, if I'm going to learn this practice, I really should study from the source. So I called up the temple in Berkeley, California, and they said, oh, Professor Lin Yun, he's going to be teaching at Harvard, and you're on the East Coast, we're on the West Coast, so you should really go to, just stay local. And this is another side story, is that when I applied to graduate school in architecture, I was actually accepted at Harvard, but I didn't go. And the main reason is because I wanted to get away from home, because I'm originally from Boston, Arlington, Massachusetts. So that's the reason why I went to Philadelphia. But talk about synchronicities. I mean, here's Professor Lin Yun teaching at the Harvard Divinity School, which meant I had to go back home. My mom was still in Arlington, so I go back home, and Harvard's right down the street, so I was able to study with him. And then, in addition to him, I also studied with many, many different Chinese teachers, and I literally went around the world. I went to China and to India and to Europe to study with all these different Chinese masters. So, and over the years, I've kind of created this practice of integrating feng shui as a part of my design practice.
That's incredible. And it sounds like it came, I wouldn't say naturally, but it sounds like you were really good at it right off the bat too.
Yes, actually, I was actually with the very first workshops with Professor Lin Yun at Harvard. It was a kind of interesting experience because people will come up to me and say, oh, you're the feng shui guy from New York City. And I said, oh, this is my first classes here. So I don't know how that rumor got, moved around.
Already making a name for yourself. I wonder if it was a name change.
I didn't have my name changed. I don't know whether I had my name changed, but it could have, but I don't know.
And also it's kind of funny too that you mentioned, you didn't want to be home, you wanted to go away for school, but going home also led to you traveling the world.
That is true. And actually that's why I feel very grateful to have my apartment here in Midtown Manhattan. It's one of these rent stabilized apartments. So as a result, it afforded, that means I can go travel around the world and, go to China and to India and to Nepal. And I even had, I had an opportunity to teach feng shui in Amsterdam, in Holland. And wow. So I actually commuted from New York to Amsterdam 2 or 3 times a year so I can teach feng shui in Holland. It was a fantastic time.
Oh my gosh, it must have been beautiful too.
Oh, it was really wonderful. And of course, I was continually to learn more about myself, feng shui, and also learning how to integrate all the different cultural traditions, whether it's from Holland or it's from China or it's from
Mhm.
Brazil. Everybody has their own traditions, but there is this concept of the wind and water, of integrating nature as part of our spaces.
I love that. I like want to walk you through my space already, but I we don't have to go there. I'm just like it's a lot of when I was considering things, I was like I love the wood, having natural elements in my room and stuff. So, but we'll get there maybe at some point. So for people who don't understand what feng shui is, can you explain a little more about it?
Sure. So feng shui, feng means wind, shui is water, wind and water. And the principle of feng shui is to create a harmony and balance of ourselves within our personal space. So of course, we have our bedroom, we have our home, we have our offices, but also our neighborhoods and the cities that we live in. So it's very interesting. So this is a question. We choose the spaces that we live in, but also are we fated to live in the spaces, and how do we react, and how can we make the changes? And to me, I was just watching a wonderful video of Mission Joy, and it's the meeting between Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And here are two major figures who have lived through tragedies in their own lives. The Dalai Lama lost his country by the time he was 16 and 26. He literally had to exile himself. And Desmond Tutu had to deal with all the apartheid in South Africa. But how did they still create joy in spite of all of the things that happened in their lives? And the one thing that I got from their talking together is about how we can change our minds, how we can reframe our minds. And so to me, feng shui is a wonderful opportunity to help people reframe their minds about the spaces and how it affects their lives.
Absolutely. So having the outside influence affects the inside perspective.
That is correct. That is correct.
And it's nice too when you feel like you can't control the inside, at the very least you can control what's going on around you, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
So how do you define a healthy environment?
How I define a healthy environment is in a space that's lots of windows, fresh air. And of course, during this COVID time, it's always good to have fresh air. Natural light, it's great to have sunlight to come into your space. It's always nice to have healthy living plants in your space. I think that is always, feng shui is about nature, really integrating nature into our space. Also, a healthy environment includes the materials that we use in our space. So it's very interesting. Our technology, we created so much man-made materials, and we have off-gassing of the carpets, the paints are smelling. And so now we're being much more conscious about how space really affects our health. And as myself, I've dealt with a health situation, but we want to be much more mindful that we want to have natural wood materials, natural fibers. I was thinking of Frank Lloyd Wright. I think he is the epitome of a feng shui architect who integrated stone and water and trees into all of his projects, and to be very organic, the feeling of, different spaces, high spaces, low spaces, and have the sun coming in, but also, to have the shade. And, we need to have all of these different factors. And that's one of the concepts in Chinese thinking, is to have the balance called yin and yang, the balance of the light and the dark, or the soft and the hard. So you want to have a lot of these different aspects, in a healthy environment.
Yes, yin and yang, and that balance is so important all around in life. I feel like it's a very, it takes a trained eye to see those balances in a space, so.
Well, I suppose, yes, I suppose it is training our eyes or training our senses to fully encompass what feels good for us. And there is a concept in Chinese thinking that you want to have the balance of the 5 qualities of energies. It's the 5-element theory. So you want to have a balance of fire and earth and metal and water and wood energies. And even though they may have an elemental quality, but they have different qualities that are associated with it. And so you want to have a balance of all of these energies associated in a healthy space.
I haven't thought about the 5 elements. So the 5th one, I guess, is the metal. Or would metal be earth?
Actually, if you can imagine a circle and think about fire, it's kind of like the top, use that as a reference point. But fire creates earth energy, so it kind of creates ashes. And then the earth gets harder and harder, really hard to create metal energy. And then metal energy, then think about transformation. So metal can transform into water energy. And then water, you use that to enhance wood energy. So that's the plants of the wood. And the plants of the wood would enhance the fire energy. That's how you fuel the fire. So that is what is known as a constructive cycle. And then there's another cycle which is happening, which is known as the destructive cycle, but I call it a balancing cycle. So like the wood or the tree could break apart the earth, like the roots breaking apart the earth, or the earth can kind of muddy up the water, or the water can put out the fire, or the fire can melt the metal. So think about the World Trade Center, catastrophe. So the fire melted the metal. So, but it's really about a balance of all these qualities of energies. And as you say, it is about, I suppose, training our eyes or being more conscious about what these elements may mean for us to create a happy and healthy home.
So what are some small feng shui tips that people can start implementing into their homes and their lives right now?
I think a very simple tip to integrate is to just get some fresh flowers. But now get a fresh vase of flowers. Doesn't have to be this big major bouquet, but fresh flowers of daffodils or rhododendrons, and say, but bring these flowers into your home to welcome good luck or to welcome harmony into your space. I was teaching feng shui at the New York Open Center many years ago, and there was these 2 or 3 women who worked together in an office, and they said they had a boss who was a little bit domineering and very kind of like intimidating. And they said, kind of created a disharmony in the office. And is there something that they could do? So my suggestion was just get some fresh flowers and just bring it to the office, just put it in the center of the office or something prominent place. And they came back the next week and they said, Mr. Chin, we just want to let you know, the whole demeanor of the office manager just changed to be much softer, just the act of bringing the flowers. And of course, they didn't have to say feng shui or say anything. All they did was just bring some flowers. So in a way, feng shui is about energy and how we can integrate energy into our space. Another thing that you could do to harmonize a couple in a space is to make sure you have equal end tables and balanced lamps on each side of the bed. So that opens up to the concept that the relationship is balanced and equal and harmonious. And so the thinking is that if your bed is against the wall, it could create, disharmony because, it's a one-sided relationship. So it's very interesting. So that's another thing I could suggest. And then another thing I could definitely suggest is where you work. I mean, we all have to work. We all have laptops, we have our iPhones, we can work from anywhere. But it'd be really good to work from what is known as the commanding position. So like for myself, as I'm doing this interview with you, Sam, I'm looking towards the door. I can see the windows in front of me, and behind me is a very beautiful fireplace. So in the Chinese thinking is a very, very descriptive way of looking at things. You want to have the mountains behind you to support you. They're known as the turtle or the tortoise mountains behind you to support you, the dragon and tiger hills on each side, and you're open to the red phoenix. So the red phoenix is really, you're open to see who's coming into your space. You can see everything in front of you. But basically, it's the concept of control. You want to be in control of your entire space. And when you feel that within yourself, then you feel much more, safe. That's a very important concept. You feel safe, but then at the same time, you're able to focus on all your work. So those are the things that I would definitely recommend that you can do in your home now. It doesn't have to be at a desk. It could be just sitting at a chair, in the corner of the space, by the window with a nice reading lamp. Maybe have a nice cup of tea or some incense going with the candle. Just create a very beautiful sacred space.
If you had just one wellness tip to share with everyone, what would it be?
My one wellness tip is to have good food. So talk about nurturing your soul and your spirit. If you have very good food, then you have very good energy. If you have very good energy, then you're able to share all of your gifts and what you can do. So as one, dealing with my health crisis, that's the one thing that my wife and I have definitely made a point is to eat all organic food, fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, organic meats and wild caught fish. And because this is the one thing that I can enhance my own wellness is by feeding myself. And I call the chemotherapy, I call it healing elixir. So even the words that we choose can really make a difference to try to enhance our chi. And, this is all the different layers of humanity. We can go all the way up to the light or go all the way down to the dark. And of course, what we want is to be in the balance. And, we have to acknowledge both the light and the dark. But I think food is the one thing that you can do. And just the act, I have to admit, that's one thing that I've learned during this pandemic. And I'm grateful that I now have the chi energy to do that. I enjoy cooking.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
So I would like to share that I've written a book called Feng Shui Revealed. And this was published back in 1998. And it was one of the first feng shui books that actually had beautiful photographs of homes and spaces of how I feng shuied the places. So it has stories associated with it. So I'm very grateful for that. And my name is R.D. Chin.
Thank you so much. We will keep in touch. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day and that you're able to enjoy your commute home, all the way home.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Bye.
It was a pleasure. Okay, bye-bye.
From moving a desk to changing the paint colors on the wall, making one small change to find balance in our home can make all the difference. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.
I cleaned up my face, my